Hello, Internet, and welcome to episode number 312 of the Comic Watchers Show. He's Chad, I'm Matt, and this is our show where we talk about comics. Chad, how you doing tonight, sir?
It's been a week.
Good, I hear you. I am rushing headlong into finals week for school this semester, and I am in the thick of it, on top of all my Comic Watch stuff. So let's have some fun for the next hour instead of thinking about all the other craziness going on. Our guest tonight is author Ray Jameson, here to talk to us about his comic, The Madcaps, now funding on Kickstarter. Ray, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's always nice to just talk face-to-face with people from different areas of the planet over similar interests, in this case comic books. It's a good time, man.
We love it. Obviously we've been doing this for a long enough time that somebody out there thinks talking to us about comics is a good idea.
We're still talking to us about comics.
Yes absolutely. So Ray, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your backstory with comics? How did you get into this genre and fall in love with it?
Well, I'll give you the Coles notes because there's quite a lot of information there. Well, for starters, my love for comics surpasses the limits of my memory. I am the baby of my family, and I have a brother who liked comics before me. And just like many individuals who are not the oldest of their siblings, usually they are the sidekick for the first handful of years to an older sibling's interests. And that was my first influence of comics. I was born in the early mid of the 80s. And so we had some really cool dynamics of crossovers, things that are just common now, but at the time were revolutionary, combining cartoons, combining comic books, and combining action figures. So Transformers, G.I. Joe, even Marvel dabbled at that time. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Secret Wars at that time. In the late 80s, they had their own toy line. It was a really cool time to love that medium. Now, I went through the 90s, and as a 90s kid, I had the privilege of enjoying Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill in Batman the Animated Series. I had the privilege of experiencing what has now been rebranded as X-Men 97. I could go on and on. There's so many cool different shows in there, but one of the coolest things at the end of the 90s was movies that represented comics took a different level in regards to taking themselves more seriously. So the big one for me, in my opinion, was Blade in 98 with Wesley Snipes. After that, the next big one for me was X-Men in 2000 with Bryan Singer directing. Hugh Jackman, of course, his big breakout mainstream established brand, really, was what he became after that. And then, of course, in 2002, the big springboard was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, and William Dafoe. And as an adolescent, as a teenager, I got to grow up through all of these different mediums. I went from, in the early 90s, everybody I went to school with, it was almost the litmus test to say I didn't like comics was like the way of saying I'm cool. And then by the time my last year of high school was in 2002, it came like a complete 180. And after that movie came out, that was in May 3rd of 2002. I'll never forget that date. But until the end of June, everybody just talked comics. I'm like, wow, at least I got to exit the views of comics and where I went to school on a high note. It was really, really cool. It's been a really, really cool ride to see things like the success of the MCU. It's been really neat to see just very, very, relatively speaking, unnoticed comic books get their own spotlight. Most common one now, Invincible in its animated series. Many people never read that comic, but there are individuals out in other forms of entertainment that now look at these books as more than just pictures with some words. It's more of the art of how the story is being told, and people are starting to see it for the story it is, as opposed to the delivery they just look at the comic book as not as good quality as words with pictures compared to novels that are hundreds and hundreds of pages telling the same story. They're starting to look through that filter and see it as, this is a cool story. Let's tap into that kind of thing.
Well, I just want to say you've made me feel old. Graduating in 2002, I was 2 years out of college, so.
I was 3 years out of high school myself, so you're still in my cohort. Chad's the old man tonight.
Yeah, it's been a really cool dynamic. One saving grace I always say to anybody older than me, I always say I was born in the Orwellian year of 1984, and usually people of older generations, okay, I grudgingly accept you for that reference. And
it's more true these days, unfortunately, but that's another podcast.
That's a story for another time. I'm Canadian, so I'm immune. So there you go.
So, it seems like comic books have been a big part of you. Do you remember maybe the first one or that you kind of picked up and,
I have fuzzy memories. I'm sure because of the digital era that we're in, I'm sure I could look up and pinpoint the eras. But if I look around the mid to late 80s, there was a time when Hulk was traveling to different dimensions. He was out in space and stuff. I visually remember him fighting in a gladiator arena, fighting these like brownish purple, very hairy beasts, and him like ragdolling them. I do remember an era of Iron Man where Tony Stark was his alcoholism was too much, so Rhodes took over as Iron Man. I looked this up. One of my favorite graphic novels to read is Secret Wars. And when I looked up the release date of the first one, was like 3 weeks before I was born. So there's a lot of intimate connection to me in that era. But I remember in Secret Wars, I remember that was Tony Stark was not Iron Man at the time. James Rhodes was of that era. One of the coolest things I remember just getting into the 90s, I remember pulling off the spinner rack because I was with my parents going to the grocery store. I remember pulling a brand new copy of Hulk 377, and I wish I still had it, but it was just a random comic to me. It's not like I had the gift of clairvoyance. It's just, wow, this is cool. There's Banner is green and gray, and he looks himself at the same time, and in his mind all three of them are beating themselves up, and it's a really cool era, Yeah, it's so cool.
So, given your love for comics and the influence it seems to have had in your, life, your short life, what made you want to, start making your own?
Well, there's a couple. Again, I'll try and do the Coles notes. So,
we have an hour.
I could go longer than an hour, that's for sure. But regardless, in 2007, I moved across country. I left my family, I left my friends and everything. At the time, I was in my early 20s and I was still living with my parents. So basically, when I moved, I took everything out of my bedroom, stuffed it in my car, and went for a drive, and I never came back. And that was a really cool thing. Given hindsight, one of the best ways to word this, I was too naive to understand what loneliness was. And I never felt lonely going through those dynamics. I mean, I've carved out a life for myself. I have a wife and children, and I'm happy with my job and no complaints there. But looking back, if I were to repeat that, I would understand the isolation I put myself through in certain dynamics. And but anyways, whenever I had the chance, I would try to find reasons to hang out with my friends via webcam. And unless it's a driven thing, this podcast, for example, we're hanging out and talking for a reason about a topic. But if you're just sitting there, I mean, you can talk with your friend on the phone. We don't have to be standing there and being weird talking webcam. So I said I enjoyed fantasy. Like, again, that last year of high school for me, December 2001, was the first Lord of the Rings, that Fellowship of the Ring, rather. So that was a big deal. That was a big cultural impact, and I very much enjoyed fantasy. So I said to everybody, why don't we, if you're up for it, I'll be a dungeon master. We'll play some Dungeons and Dragons. I've never played before. I chewed a lot. I bit off a lot. I didn't bite off more than I could chew, but to add to the dynamic, when my friends and I were playing, I made up my own homebrew campaigns. There was no modules that I followed, so that's a very ambitious task for a first-timer dungeon master. So, for the last 15 plus years, we've been carving out this really cool lore of this realm that I made up. And I make one-shots and campaigns that last for a couple years. I have one currently. It's on a bit of a hiatus, but we're going to finish it up, where we have an entire party. They just met on a boat. The boat gets attacked by pirates. They escape on a lifeboat to an island, and the island is surrounded by this strong current. They can't get off. And the pirates almost, or I shouldn't say almost, very recklessly, they sacrifice their ship to get on the island and keep hunting these people. And halfway through the campaign, they find out one of the main players is the captain who is mutinied, and they're trying to chase him down and kill him. And it goes for a whole wild thing. But there's all these really cool stories throughout the last 15 plus years that we've been doing this thing. And I just wanted a means to express that and tell other people about it. So what I ended up doing was looking around with some talent. It's my first time on the creative side of a comic book. So what I wanted to do was make sure it started good and ended good. I didn't want it to be 1, 2, 3 issues and fizzle out. I wanted light at the end of the tunnel. This is uncharted territory for me. So I want to make sure that I can attack any problems that arise, but not get overwhelmed and quit. I didn't want a scenario like that. So I wrote out the script based off of some of the earlier stories that happened in that lore. I took out the main characters that the players are playing as, and I injected my own in. And I based it off of people I knew, things they aspired to be like. I was able to exaggerate both their strengths and their weaknesses and make these really cool characters that synergized very well, but also rubbed each other the wrong way. And it really felt like a real scenario of people that were legitimate, a circle of friends, a camaraderie, something like that. And once I was finished the script, I had some people read it. I got their input, and then I started looking for talent at that point. And eventually I got some recognition. I reached out to a publisher, shout out to Philbo Publishing, who eventually took me on. Some really cool news. Once this book is finished, it will be going to local comic shops through his distribution. This is my first time writing, so I'm flattered. I have repeat readers, and repeat backers, which just reiterates that it must be at least above average in story. And I took my time with this. This wasn't a rush job, and I've been releasing issues 1, 2, and 3 every April. This April being the last for issue 3, completing that mini series. So it's been really interesting with a lot of life. My sales pitch for this, just asking like what would lead me to doing this, my sales pitch for this is every human being, in my opinion, you get old enough, according to Chad, I'm almost old enough to do this. You have friends that you don't get to see as much as you used to. And it might get to the point where it's refreshing to see them for 5 minutes as they're passing through the city in a parking lot, because that's the only time you have to afford. There's just responsibilities in life that get in the way. It could be school, it could be work, it could be kids. You could have moved across country like myself. And my sales pitch is this story that takes place in one night through 3 issues is an homage to that level of camaraderie. It's just told the theme of fantasy through the medium of a comic book. So if ever anybody listening right now, if any of this rings to you, that Kickstarter, you can get all 3 issues. You can back it right now. And I guarantee you it's a story you'll look at it and say, you know what? I can respect this. I appreciate it for what it is.
So why don't we, I guess, jump right into Madcaps? Kind of give us the elevator pitch and then kind of a summary of, what's been going on and where we find, the characters for this 3rd and final issue.
For sure. Well, the elevator pitch, I don't think it would change for what I said, but I'll give a little bit of a plot synopsis. So these 4 friends who haven't seen each other in a while, they meet up in their hometown. and they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And right at the beginning, they end up helping the local guards stave off an undead outbreak. With a couple of escalations and intrigues, it's led to believe that this outbreak might have something to do with a local drug problem with this substance known as only weave. So the entire night is these four on, dare I say it, a Scooby-Doo kind of adventure, minus the dog, where they're trying to find out where the source of this drug. They shake down a couple of junkies. They get a couple leads, takes them to a bandit's hideout where it's actually they just wanted to scope out the area before reporting everything to the authorities. And they even discuss amongst themselves, like, these guys have some cool signatures or haymakers, if you will, but they're not adventurers. They're not the mightiest of people in the realm. At the beginning of the first issue, 3 of them are almost overwhelmed by the undead, and they're saved by guards. And I've made this joke before on other podcasts. This is the equivalent of like Picard getting saved by a bunch of red shirts. I wanted to really feel like there's some gravity to their decisions, and they could actually get hurt, actually fall, and have some type of level of seriousness that everything they do, they should be careful here. So in this bandit's hideout, it's actually revealed that there's some captured citizens. So instead of doing just some type of reconnaissance, they realize that's the other thing about being with your friends. Every human being, if you're with your friends, in my opinion, you are more inclined to live up to how your friends view you. So if you have these four friends, rather, in this scenario, there's captured citizens. If they do nothing, they wouldn't be able to look at themselves in the mirror again. So that turns into a little bit of a rescue mission with some critical elements. Anyways, going into the third issue, what I can say about this final issue is it's revealed that there's a necromancer involved, and by sunrise, there's going to be a curse on their hometown. I can't say what the correlation is with the undead outbreak at the start. You'll have to read that. But this all boils down to these 4 friends who have pulled an all-nighter, who are exhausted. They have some fatigue set in. They're not the best of athletes per se, and they're not well rested. This turns into can these worn out individuals who can't even afford time to go get help rush and actually survive the night and stop this problem from happening?
So after thank you for sending the first 2 issues, and you can definitely see the Dungeons and Dragons-esque role playing influence. Talk a little bit about each of the characters. I know you've kind of mentioned them in passing, but kind of
sure. Who should I start with? Give me a favorite.
I like the big lizard guy.
The big Madcaps? Sure. So the one thing to disclaim with all of these individuals is they all have the theme, just like most characters written in stories. The question is, who am I and how do I fit in the world? Madcaps, he's raised by humans since he was hatched as an egg. His species hails from something only known as the Great Stormworm, which is this large kaiju-like electric eel that lives out in the oceans. So Madcaps is a hardy specimen. He clears 6.5 feet. He clears 350 pounds in body weight. He can store, because of what he descends from, he can store lightning in his gizzard and vomit it out. He has limited supplies, just like a skunk with its smelly defense mechanism, or a poisonous snake with some type of poison or venom, rather, in its fangs. He can only do it so much. You see it in the first issue. That's why you haven't seen it since, because he's depleted. This is all in a little frame of time. Madcaps, despite everything I've just told you, the scariest thing about him is actually his brain. He has a lot of potential with the arcane, which you see him debut a little bit, but the key word is his potential. He has not had the opportunity to study, reiterate, and strengthen those skills and abilities. Some people really like in the first issue where he's able to catch the creature one zombie rather, by the throat, set its head on the fire and throw it aside. Less mess this way, instead of like slashing it to pieces when they find it in the middle of a church. He's done some other cool stuff, like a bandit jumping off of a horse to try and stab him, and he pulls earth out of the ground in a column and hits the guy right in the torso, launching him behind him, which is really, really cool. He's not an extrovert, and that doesn't mean he can't speak to people, but he prefers, as you saw in the first issue, when in the first couple of pages, when they have to reveal who they are before they're allowed access into the city of Ivywood. Guards are about to approach him, and he says, Ivywood's charges against me were dropped, and there's nothing else revealed of what that means, but he ends up also saying to Dunnan, I'd rather be somewhere with my nose in a book. So he is, I would say, in fantasy language, you would say something like a sage, but in modern tongue, you'd say he's a bookworm. He loves study, and that is the most interesting thing about him. Maybe we'll do this by descending height. The next tallest guy, who is 6'1", his name is Chazgo Blundale. Chazgo, unlike Madrakis, I apologize. The last thing I'll say about Madrakis, he looks imposing because of the armor he wears, which is strictly ceremonial. It reflects the culture of the individuals he knows very little of, that he hails from. He can't hide who he is. He just embraces it and expresses himself accordingly. Where Chazgo comes from a group of elves that live in a mountain range. It's riddled with silver deposits. In real life, if humans ingest enough silver, their skin actually tattoos blue. You can look that up on YouTube. There's a really famous interview with Oprah. It looks like Papa Smurf, basically. But of course, because it's fantasy, Chazgo's people, these Argers, this offshoot of elves, they're highly resistant to magic. And one of the weirdest things about that, the culture of his people, they worship the mountain range that they live amongst. And also they feel magic is an abomination. They feel worshiping this mountain protects them from magic, but in reality, it's just the silver running in their system. They're considered, one could say in a modern tongue, xenophobic. They want nothing to do with outsiders. And many mages, mercenaries, many merchants is the word I'm looking for. Those all ironically start with them. But regardless, they all steer clear of that mountain range. They do not want to mess with these guys. Chazgo feels his people are very dysfunctional and wanted to leave, but where do you go when every settlement that he would to approach would pretty much kill him on sight? So what Chazgo ends up doing is he's approached by a being only known as Annette. In the first issue, the narration is Chazgo writing to Annette, and she finds a means to give him some magical gifts, if you will. One of the most important ones is he can disguise himself. And so he lives as a human amongst Ivywood, and he is a representative of a noble. He's worked his way up through those ranks. It's very interesting because that's dancing very close to danger. If his identity was ever compromised, he'd be killed on sight. So it hasn't really been revealed why he's decided to choose this path. It's very, very kind of there's safer means of doing things, but getting in the political route where people are always like looking for flaws in you and stuff, it seems like not that careful, despite him being a very careful individual and reserved. His three friends are the only ones that knows what he actually is. In the first issue, when that undead outbreak happens, Chazgo says, I can't do anything. Like, if I start slinging spells and shooting light from my hands and killing things, people are going to know. And as far as everybody knows, I can't do that. So he ends up calling for guards. That's the only way he can go for help. Chazgo's pretty interesting in that respect because, unlike Madrakis, he's very reserved. He hides a lot about himself. Last thing I'll say about him is in issue 2, it's revealed he has a pet. It's a 3-eyed albino raven. And it's a critical piece in that issue where he can see through the raven's eyes and survey the bandits' fortification of what they're going to be getting themselves into. Lots of people love Chazgo. The next tallest one would be a full-blooded dwarf named Sarlacc Swamp Trudger. He's the one behind my head in this image. You can kind of see him there. Sarlacc, his dwarves, or his group of dwarves, many generations back, decided to leave the mountains and work the land using livestock and produce. And they decided to do this in the middle of a swamp because dwarves are stubborn, as they say. Over time, they've been able, through generations, terraform out and make fertile working lands. One byproduct to this in his culture, it's very common to be able to know how to track down and pacify things that go bump in the night, which is very understandable when you have a group of people that live in very unfertile swamplands. You're going to come into problems and trouble. That goes without saying. He felt compelled to move into Ivywood, which is predominantly humans and orc. You don't see orcs, and there's a reason for that, which has not been revealed yet. But Sarlacc, he's very devout to a creature only known as the Divine, something rather only known as the Divine, and because of that, he has some bonuses, if you will. Here you can see he has a defensive ward, driving back some skeletons, but one of the interesting things about him is he chose, going back to the theme of who am I and how do I fit in the world, he chose to go in a place where he does not fit in, and he just wants to be a beacon of light, if you will, or he wants to do right by those who are less fortunate than him. And he's choosing to be in a scenario where it might be a little lonely, and you really have to take people's respect. You can't just assume everybody's going to like a dwarf, right?
Sure.
One of the cool things about Sarlacc in particular, he's got a battle axe. It's a holy weapon, and in one of the latest variant covers for issue 3 by Jay Sloan, he's got an axe that goes right into the skull of one of the creatures, one of the skeletons, and you could tell it's almost like an allergic reaction. You can see light shooting out of the wound, which is really cool. Then the last guy, and also the least, is little Dunan Eni, who is under 4 feet in height. His mom is a gnome and his dad is a dwarf. And he's a little bit shorter than your average dwarf, and he can't grow a beard, and he has a hard time fitting in with either culture, despite him drawing from both bloodlines. Because of this weird dynamic that has been his normal growing up, he can develop a bond just as strong as he can with any family member. He can do with a friend as well. The inside cover of issue 1, it has him there's a quote of him explaining to his friends why he thinks so highly about the other 3. One interesting byproduct, which Dunan believes he gets from his mixed bloodlines, just like his mother, who has magical influence over nature, Dunan has a similar ability, but over metals and crystalline structures. So he can heat up the head of his smithing hammer, for example, or he has this contraption, this telescope that peeks over his shoulder. It's synced to his goggles. It can blast raw arcana out of it. He's kind of made a contraption, if you will. He thinks very highly of his friends, and I wouldn't say he's comic relief, but he is more jovial than the other 3. The other 3 look at life more serious, like, here's some things that happened in my life, I don't want that to happen again, where Dunan kind of looks at it the opposite. Well, these are some bad things, or here's some baggage in my life, just like anybody else. Mm-hmm. How do I make a good one? How do I preemptively not make the bad thing happen? Let's go have a good time. This whole story, the whole reason these 4 are together is he's found the means of employment for a short contract, and he wants all 4 to be together. He's the whole reason the metaphorical band is back together again.
Now, do you, of the 4, do you have a favorite, or one do you find easier to write?
Well, that's a solid question. I think that's the first time I've been asked which one's easier to write. I've been asked if I have a favorite. I don't think I have a favorite, because these are based off of all real people I know. When I was writing this, I took inspiration from, I want to say Secret Wars, but it's not that. Civil War is the word I'm looking for. The original Civil War, because of all of the metahumans involved, at one point the editor at the time had Post-it notes with every character's name on it. put on the wall at different times to keep track and say to the artist, you could draw any of these people, but you can't draw this one because during this time in a different issue, there's somewhere else. And it was that's like crazy high organization. It makes sense to pull off stuff like that. For me, I did a scaled down version of that because I don't have near as many characters, obviously. One thing I did do was there's an online platform called Roll20. It's for tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons, of course. And one thing I did was I made my own board. I made a one-player game. Nobody was playing with me. I had all the tokens. And as I was going through the script, I would move them around to different areas to reiterate to me, this makes sense. And then also in regards to how easy it was to write the characters, because it was based off of people I know, well, it makes sense this person would do this. It makes sense this person would perceive or look at this. It makes sense this person would be annoyed at his friend. It makes sense. I was pleasantly surprised how easily it melted together.
Are there any characters based off of maybe you? Because you sounds like you base the characters off your friends you know.
Well,
are there any?
I understand what you're asking. This is what I'll tell you. When you play a game of D&D, if you're the dungeon master, you don't have a character in the game. But you have all the other characters that you're playing out as, all the non-person characters, as they call it. I guess that's the best way to answer your question.
You know, the one thing that really stuck... excuse me. Excuse me. The thing that struck me upon reading the first issue is just how real and lived in the relationships between these four leads feels. Did you find it was challenging in any way to write them so tightly knit?
Oh, okay, so there's a two-part answer to that. The first part is because of all of the lore, like I said before, this is over 15 years worth of lore that I've been playing in this world. A lot of it was self-explanatory. I would somehow connect these characters to that lore. So a little bit of a cheat code there. The second part to it was I wanted to make sure certain things would happen. For me, it just felt easy to put in tidbits to give depth to these characters. So my first goal was when this story, I want the world to feel like the story exists or the world exists before the story and it's going to exist after the story. Mm-hmm. But in regards to these characters, it was very easy to insert things that didn't feel forced. It felt natural. The first example being Madcaps saying Ivywood's charges against me were dropped. I don't need to say every detail to why he doesn't want to go to Ivywood. But when I say something like that, I allow the reader's mind to wander and fill in the gaps. There's two things you could put, and I say this with artists when I'm communicating on a script. You need creative constraints, but you don't want to overwhelm it to a point where an artist's flair can't push through. But this counts as well to the reader. If you leave just enough out and let their minds wander, they're unanswered questions, but it doesn't feel like the story is missing anything. So there's many people that have asked, I want to know why Madcaps had charges against him. What the heck happened there? This makes sense. But if I put in 4, 5, 6 paragraphs of that, I've now bored out the reader. I'd rather let the reader's mind wander. It's the same thing with any type of horror movie. Really good ones, they show as little as possible, including the scary thing. The less you see, the more your mind is going to fill in anything worse than anything that you could see. And that goes with anything, not just horror.
Right on.
So you kind of mentioned it. Tell us about the rest of the creative team and how did you get connected with them?
Yeah, for sure. So I got to give a couple of shout outs. So we have on this issue, we have Victor Medina, my interior artist. Victor Medina, he has also done the main cover for issue 3. The funny story about that cover is that was his warm-up sketch to do the interiors for issue 2, and I found out after issue 2's campaign was done, and I was beside myself. I thought, gee, I wish I knew. I would have done something with that. I would have bought it off them. So I said, I insist. We'll do some color corrections, but I want this to be the main cover because it's pretty awesome. We have a secret stretch goal that may or may not involve some work with Victor Medina. I can't say anything else, but anybody looking to back, if you put into that, we'll get closer to that stretch goal. It adds to, assuming you're a physical backer, of course, it will add to that, which is really, really awesome. Who else on the team can we go with? Let's say Dan Kemp. Dan Kemp has a very, very dense and diverse portfolio in coloring. This includes Spawn 50 to 150. This includes the John Ramada Jr. era of Spider-Man, where Peter Parker was a high school teacher. And I just asked, and he said, sure. I was beside myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I asked a lot of people, and I got a lot of people that said no, and it's very understandable because who am I? This is my first time creating. Like, I might as well be saying I'm a big deal. If you don't believe me, ask me, I'll tell you. So basically, I just ask, let them say no, move on, and anybody that I feel is worthy, if they say yes, man, I think somebody who's worthy of this story. It's pretty awesome. Letterer, Micah Myers, he's lettered all 3 issues, and he's been doing a great job. And also myself as a writer and editor, but of course, shout out to Phil Russert, again, my publisher. He's been very good to me, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity and the network that he's exposed me to for just taking me on.
So this is you've kickstarted the first 2 issues. I'm going to assume, just
yes,
because how's your experience been with those 2 campaigns, and how does that compare to this one? Because I know that you're already over your funding goal
by a big amount.
So we've just hit quadruple for 400% of funding. I set a token number for funding. I hit $500. I felt that was reasonable. My goal, like I prepaid for everything going into this, all of the services from all of the talent. My goal isn't drink too much soda at a time. My goal is not to have break even or pay for the finances. This is my hobby. This isn't my day job. I wanted to get this cool story out there. That's my main goal. So when it says 400% funded, it's the same goal I've had for the last 2 issues. This is the fastest it's been funded, and it's projected to have the most amount of backers, which I'm flattered. It shows that people are really appreciating the story, which was the whole point to why I set it to a lower number. But as a litmus test, I've kept it consistent with all the issues, just so I have some apples to apples comparison, and I can listen to what the fans want. If they're backing it quicker, I must be doing something right. I'm going to keep doing the awesome thing.
So what are your different levels of rewards for this campaign?
Yeah, so this campaign, anybody who's never even heard of this story, you can get all 3 issues. There's actually a special edition issue, or a trilogy, I'm calling it, which is all 3 issues with brand new covers by Rod Ramos Rodolfo and colored by Dan Kemp. When you combine them, it makes this image behind me. This image is a depiction of the last act of the last book. And there's a lot going on. So, for example, here we have the main antagonist and Madrakis squaring off. Madrakis doesn't look in good shape, complete with a torn-up cape. We have, of course, Sarlacc repelling a bunch of undead. And then we have, to the right of me, we have Chasgo. We have, there we go. We have Dunnan. Oh, my hand's vanishing. And then, of course, we also have this creature with a hairy leg, and nothing's been revealed of that yet. So the main antagonist, there's no mention of it in the first 2 issues. And the first time, rather, she was debuted, we debuted the main antagonist cover for it back in October by Harv Salteras. Harv Salteras, he drew the first year interiors and covers of Dan Ketch as Ghost Rider in the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of that, he colored, or rather the cover was colored by Dan Kemp. So when you think about it, I've got a colorist of Image's Hellspawn and then a illustrator of Marvel's Hellspawn combining talents. Pretty awesome. They've never crossed paths before and combined their abilities. They've done it twice from the Mina, once in the first issue and now for this.
That's awesome.
And, I'm very happy to have been allowing those guys to do that cool thing. Am I okay to share my screen?
Well, it's a pretty looking book. I mean, the interior art itself reminds me of Scott Collins.
Yeah.
In a
Beautiful.
very positive way. Yeah, just great looking stuff. And then your cover artist for issue 1, forgive me for not knowing his name, Jimbo
Salgado.
Jimbo Salgado. Yeah, his
Yes.
art reminded me of Jim Chung. So
Yeah.
you're clearly in good company.
Yeah, well, I if I'm going to do this, again, this is my first time on the creative side. If this thing tanked and I never did it again, I wanted it to be a thing where it was worthy of the industry, regardless of whether it's better than insert favorite comic book here. I wanted a quality of book that was worthy of being in the same LCS as that favorite book. Something that would be in the spinner rack. That's my goal. Walk away with my head up. In order to do that, I didn't want to do any half punches or half measures. I wanted good expressed art. But that's the other thing. When people say who's the best artist, well, it depends what they're drawing. Like Picasso's really good at making cartoons, but it'd be terrible for Spawn. And I'm pretty sure Todd McFarlane would suck doing a Picasso piece, you know. For my book in that fantasy setting, I wanted people that were in the game of fantasy, in the realm somehow, and in their portfolio. And when it's expressed, the combination, the sum is greater than its whole, if that makes sense. So when it was all done, I'm like, yes, this is, I can walk away from this content. Another cool dynamic of this, I can't say who, but 2 individuals have approached me for writing a one-shot. So I'm really happy about that. And that's for different publishers. I'm flattered. So again, the book must be a little bit above average, I guess, to put it humbly.
Sure. So your friends with whom you've been for 15 years have been campaigning with in D&D, how do they feel about this world you've created together being brought to life?
Well, they're very flattered. They were one of the first people I showed the script to, which they appreciate. They thought it was really cool. It's really neat that they're on. It's not a joke, but they're on the inside of the non-joke, if you will. They like to see the art come out and wow, that character. When they see the art and it's an expression of how I view them, they're just very flattered. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Now, I know you kind of explained how you, when you were, writing, you would kind of do the dungeon master thing and move, pieces around. How did dungeon mastering translate into writing the story? Writing for you.
Yeah, I mean that's another question I haven't been asked yet, and I'm well over 60 podcasts promoting this. That's a good job. I got to give you credit for that. So, the first thing is, if you are, let's say, a structural engineer and you have to consider plumbing, one of the main things for plumbing is water goes down, so you have to direct it accordingly, right? For me, knowing the players and what I've established, how do I intrigue them and provoke them to be their characters? And with that mindset, going back to that virtual game that I ran just to play out the script and stuff, it was a matter of putting in dynamics to drive them. And for me, it didn't feel like writing as much as it was reporting non-history. I'm just, this cool thing happened. I'm switching up a bit, but here's the cool thing. If the people I know were witnessing the cool thing, what would they do? And it was almost like a plug and play.
Interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. So, oh, go ahead.
No,
Chuck.
go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, your skills as a dungeon master. How did those play into, or translate, I should say, into writing a script for the first time?
When you're dungeon master, it's not your game, it's the player's game.
Mm-hmm.
You're a facilitator. So really what you're doing is putting in a bunch of metaphorical questions and waiting for the answers and reacting off of that. I'll give you a humorous story. One time I was playing, only 2 players were available in this scenario. The castle they were visiting, everything was locked up. There's an anticipation of orcs coming to approach the castle. There's no context. They don't know if it's an invasion or if there's just traveling or what. So the 2 players speak to the powers to be. We'd like to go and scout and report back what we find. This is obviously a serious thing. So they get halfway between the castle and the oncoming orcs, and the large fighter / barbarian of the 2 of them, he says, what I want to do is I want to sharpen up a bunch of posts for the next hour. I want to drive them into the ground in our main road, angled towards the oncoming army. And I said, okay, fine. Do your constitution check. He rolls. And I said, for the next hour, you're going to be carving out these pikes, these spikes, these sharpened up wooden poles from branches you can find, cutting down local branches on trees. And you're going to be putting 23 of those set up. He says, great, awesome. The rogue, the other player, he says, while he's doing that, I want to spend the hour having the distance again. So basically going 3/4 of the distance to the oncoming orcs. And I want to see if I can get any more critical information, something that we could use. So he makes the distance and he says, I'm going to use my telescope and I want to check in on them. Great. Do a perception check. Now, as a dungeon master up to this point, I had no idea they were going to leave the castle. I thought they were going to help fortify the castle and get ready. And they threw me for a loop, but I was happy to facilitate this. So I tell this rogue, do your perception check with your telescope. He rolls. You guys familiar with D&D or no?
Yeah.
Superficially.
Okay, so basically anybody listening, if you roll a 1 on a 20-sided dice, it's a fail no matter how good you are at it. This is rolling a 1 when you try to stomp out an ant. You miss the ant and break your ankle. That's basically what a critical one's like. If you roll a natural 20, it is the equivalent of having Bill Murray fumble his way out of maximum security. It's possible, but the chances are very low. So this rogue, he rolls a natural 1. And I tell him he sees a large man sitting on a rock sharpening poles. Obviously, he's looking the wrong way, but I had to improvise that, and it was just a funny outcome. Instead of looking at the orcs, the natural 1, he's looking at his friend the wrong way. For me, the improv, I have to be anticipatory of that stuff. I think I'm half decent at improv, but I think that does help. Like I was saying before, I'm asking all the questions, and then again, I have the cheat code where the people I'm basing this off of, they would do this. They would do this. They would do that. They would say this. And it just kind of, it was a plug and play. It just melted together. Very few edits did I have to do that didn't feel like it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So if you weren't being the DM for campaign, what would be your race and alignment? See, I'm using the lingo.
Okay, so alignment, out of the 9 possible, if you do it a grid, anybody who's not familiar, if you do a grid of good, neutral, evil, and then on the other, going the other direction, if you have lawful, neutral, and chaotic, I believe I would be good, lawful, good. It's hard because there's extremes to all of those. Lawful good, for example, or let's say lawful neutral. That's Judge Dredd. The law's the law no matter what, even if I'm like killing a child in the process, if that's the law, he's going to do it. Where lawful good, there's always conundrums of people that hate themselves because they're either breaking the law for the better thing or they're following the law even though they know it's the wrong thing. If you have neutral good would be like a Peter Parker, a Spider-Man, where he's doing the right thing even if it doesn't follow the law, but is trying to enforce the law. somewhere in the ones I just gave you, for example, somewhere in there you would have to have a Matt Murdock that tries to uphold the law, but also at night is trying to break the law to do the right thing, kind of thing. For me, I think I would do like a half elf, and I think it would be neutral good. In regards to class, I would either go the route of bard or monk, one of those two.
Okay.
When I would play with I played with my some friends in college, and I would always be the chaotic rogue.
Let me talk to the bartender, see if we can get a discount. Where is he, in the back? Okay, free drinks for the rest of the night, guys. I love it.
Just shoot first, ask questions later.
Shoot first, don't ask questions, but give answers to questions that aren't being asked as well.
Well, usually it was I'd be rolling the one, so
I love it.
But
fire crossbow, drawstring snaps. Darn it!
Big lash gash on the face. You're blind for the next 5 rounds.
Yes, blood stinging, the salt from your blood stinging your eyes. Oh, hilarious.
So, Ray, you've created a very expansive world, both in the game and in the comic. Do you foresee more comic book adventures in Ivywood and beyond?
Well, that's not the first time I've heard it. I've heard a little worded differently. It's not the, I guess the best way to put it, I like to focus on one pod at a time. I try to avoid back burners. My goal is to get this Kickstarter done, speak to my publisher in a game plan in regards to what it looks like distributing this through his distribution and going to your local comic shops. After that, I'm open to ideas, but my goal this entire time was just get these 3 issues done. So I don't know the answer yet.
Okay, fair.
So we usually do a top 5, but I completely forgot to give you a topic and all that. But
that's okay. I'm okay on the fly here.
Well, I was just going to say we could go around and talk about the best thing we read this week. Yeah.
This week.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go first. I read and reviewed the Spider-Man Superman crossover, and I feel like the DC one was a lot better, and there was a lot more, especially in the kind of the main feature. Mark Waid's story really outpaced Brad Meltzer's, in just overall emotion and all that. But I would say the best thing I probably read was the latest issue of Ice Cream Man. I mean, it's just it's such a good book. I mean, and this the past couple issues I've read, it's been more of a let's address some sort of social issue or something like that. And this was just a fun, very Twilight Zone / Black Mirror episode.
Awesome
issue.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's neat, man.
So, best thing I read this week was the trade of all 12 issues of Batman and Robin Year One by Mark Waid and Chris Samney. These two working together is, they are a known quantity, as it were, of quality. And this is absolutely a fantastic series. The character work, the story beats, the fact that somebody was able to string 12 issues of Batman together without the Joker getting involved was nice. A nice change of pace.
I don't believe you.
No, really.
But if somebody can do it, Mark Waid can.
Absolutely. Wade's knowledge of lore and just his deep love for the DC universe and its inhabitants just shines through at every page.
Yeah.
Chris Samney is just an artistic force to be reckoned with. Very, very 10 out of 10, my highest recommendation. So, Ray, that leaves you. What was the best thing you read this week?
The only thing I've read this week is something I've already mentioned earlier in this show, which is graphic novel of Secret Wars, 1984.
Heck yeah!
And there's a lot of iconic dynamics going on there. I try to read that at least once a year because I just appreciate it for. There's so many things going on, and I could speak so long about it. Just even little tiny things, certain visuals like Spider-Man getting trapped in a giant metal ball by Magneto and him just bounced him around and stuff. There's just so many cool little things in that, and so many big things as well. I just love it.
Sure. The whole I think it's issue 4 where it's the Hulk holding a mountain up on his back.
And then Reed Richards debut. Yeah, that's a great example of Dungeons and Dragons where you have this person's going to do this. How are we going to get out? Okay, well, I'm holding this off. What are you going to be doing? And then you have Reed Richards debuting the amount of intelligence that he has where, okay, Spider-Man, I know you have turbines in your web shooters. Let's use that. And Iron Man, I'm going to have to tap into your unibeam on your chest and combine this out, and they have a means of blasting a hole out of the mountain and escaping. It's just awesome.
Heck yeah. Peak Jim Shooter.
Yeah.
I think next thing on my read list is rereading the Rick Veitch Swamp Thing because the new miniseries comes out this coming week. So
nice.
I don't know, how they're going to kind of, what was it, 89 that this is finishing the story up from. So
nearly 40 years later.
I'm gonna have to, I was I was in elementary school or junior high.
Yep.
Way back when.
Back in the days.
Back in the day. Well, Ray, if you will, throw out one last little pitch for the Madcaps as we're coming in on the close of our hour.
Sure. So, how can I say this in a way I haven't said yet? Basically, if you miss your friends, if you like fantasy, if you like the dynamics of people that mean well but are not the greatest in the realm, so there's actual gravity to their actions, and if you like really cool art, such as the stuff behind my head right here, you get all that and more. I know I've used this phrase already, but the sum is greater than its whole in regards to story, in regards to art, and all of the combined talent to produce this 3-issue miniseries. There's some really cool covers on there. There's a lava foil one of Dunanini walking away from a flaming building. There's a glow-in-the-dark one of Chasgo. There's so many cool things on there, including blankets, T-shirts. You can even get a map of where this whole place or where this story takes place. You're just going to have to buy it. If you go to my Kickstarter right now and play the trailer, anybody listening, you can get a real good feel of what's the setup for this issue 3. But I guarantee you we're going to have monsters, mayhem, melee, magic, and a macabre of mayhem. It's going to be a really good time.
Or if you're just catching this interview on Saturday, you can go to Comic Watch, and at 12 noon is when we post up our crowdfunding roundup, and this interview will be there, and we'll have Madcaps also again this week.
We sure will.
Awesome. Right on, man.
Well, Ray Jameson, thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's been a wonderful pleasure talking to you. And get out there, folks, and support the Madcaps because it's a wonderful comic and you will enjoy it. And, more creators like Ray, like his entire creative team, depend on people like you to get out there and boost their projects. So here's to more creative voices in the independent realm. Thank you all for listening. And until next time, He's Chad. I'm Matt, and this is our show about comics.